Hey everyone, so today I want to reconstruct all of my official Sub-6 singles in 3x3, and so there's going to be 10 reconstructions, and pretty much the way these are going to work is sort of like a Chris Olsen style walkthrough solve. Pretty much for each of the solves, I'll just walk you guys through my solution, as well as perhaps a few instances of things that I could have done better in these solves. So that's really all I have to say about the reconstructions, but I'd also like to point out that starting tomorrow, September 2nd, I'm going to have school. And as a result, I probably won't be able to upload as frequently as you've seen me upload over the past maybe few months or so. And so I just like to put that out there sort of as a warning, a disclaimer. And so yeah, without further ado, let's just get into these walkthrough solves. So the first solve I'm going to reconstruct is a 597. This was from Washington Championship Finals, solve 4. And so back when I was competing, I only did white cross ever. Nowadays, I'm pretty much white-yellow, but yeah, I did white cross. And so I solved this white cross and tracked the blue-orange pair. Pretty much, I'm just going to do L prime, F prime to solve red and green in relation to one another. Then I can do D prime, R prime, F, and then D prime to solve the cross. But I'm going to do a D prime U because I was tracking this pair, so I kind of did this in like one move, sort of. And then I can go and insert it into the back. Then I have blue-red. I'll rotate and then solve green-orange. And finally rotate once more to solve green-red. Then I have this pretty easy COLL case. It's pretty much just the HOLL with like headlights pointing in opposite directions. And there are opposites on one side like this. And then finally I have a U-perm. And so this was a pretty decent solve. I think it was 59 moves and 9.88 ETPS. And so it was a really solid solve, especially during the final round, which was pretty nerve-wracking. I ended up executing this pretty well. So next up is a 596. This was from Yakima Side Events 2019 Finals, solve 2. And so the white cross is like really, really bad. But once again, I only did white back when I was competing. So pretty much what I did was I did a UD to set blue, red, and green up, all for one move inserts. And so I can just do L, U2, and then L wide to solve blue, red, green in relation to each other. Then from here, I should probably do like D prime U, R D prime, and then R D2. This would preserve that pair. But I didn't see that. I ended up just solving my cross normally, and then doing blue-orange instead. Next I have green-red, and I think probably the best way to solve this is just F prime, insert into the back, and then F. I think that's... Oh, actually, looking at this now, I wouldn't have seen this like in an official solve, but I can do F prime, insert into the back, U2, F, and that would be a multi-slotting trick that solves both of the red pairs. But there's literally like a 2% chance that I'd even see that in an official solve. But what I ended up doing, I think this is before I even learned that trick, I just paired them up and just used this back insert. Next up, I ended up doing blue, green, orange because it was rotationless, and I knew that this pair would stay preserved, and so I just solved those two pairs. Finally, I have OLL into a JB perm. So that was a pretty well executed solve. I think it was 60 moves and 10.07 ETPS. So once again, really nicely executed solve. Next up is a 575. This was my first official Sub-6. This took place at Rose City 2019 Finals, solve 3, I think. So I solved the white cross and I tracked the green-orange pair. Pretty much I'm going to solve green and red in relation to one another by doing an LB, L2. You can see that solves both of these. Then I can do a U to set up orange, and then finally just solve orange and blue with R prime F, R2. Next, I think the best pair to do here is probably green-red, because it's the easiest pair that's rotationless, and it also inserts into a back slot. But as I said, I was tracking green-orange. Pretty much I just solved them by pairing them up, inserting them into the front with just F moves. And then I saw green-red, paired them up, rotate, solve them into the back. Here I solved blue-red first. I think ideally, I would prefer not to have an F12 case where the edge is inserted. especially if it's for the last pair, because you can see that the way I solved this was by inserting this edge and then pairing them up. And this left me with like a triple sexy case, which isn't that good. Instead, I could have done this, which leaves me with only a double sexy case, which is slightly better. But instead, I just did this, rotate, and then I can solve this pair. And then finally, I just have super easy 3-corners ZBLL, COLL, OLL, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I predicted the PLL skip, and so that ended up being a pretty decent solve. I think it was 52 moves, 9.04 ETPS, which isn't the greatest, but it's still it's a solve that I'm proud of for being my first Sub-6, so nice. Alright, so next up I have a 569, sorry. This took place at downtown Vancouver Winter, 2020, round 1, solve 2. And so here I have a slightly below average white cross, I'd say. My solution on it was honestly pretty bad. I think what I should have done was from here I would do a U, which would set up red, and I can do R prime FL to solve green and orange, and then just B2 R2 to finish off the cross. That's not really the most finger tricky cross, but I think it's probably one of the most move efficient, maybe not. But I ended up doing a really weird solution. Pretty much I did an L to insert blue, and then I did a U prime D, and then an R. This solves green and also sets up orange to be at a slightly nicer position. And I'm only realizing this now, but apparently this pair got solved. I guess I could have done something about that. I like solving red and orange first and then inserting the last two cross edges or something. But I didn't do that either. I just did DLR to insert the final two cross edges and then align the cross, and then I solved this pair first. Next up, I have this really easy green-orange pair. I think here, preferably, I would have done this pair into the back with like lefty moves. This just makes the final pair a bit easier to look ahead to, and it's also rotationless that way. But I ended up solving it righty, like this, and then I rotated again, just to solve the final pair. And then from here, I have this super easy OLL case. It's also kind of like a one-glass layer. You can just recognize it by seeing that there's a bar here, there's a bar here. These two are opposites, and this color doesn't match either of these, I guess. You could just say that this is like adjacent to both of these colors, if that makes sense. Pretty much the algo is just like this. And then you can also predict the AUF by just noticing that this bar here, this little block, will end up in the front. And so there's U prime AUF. And so I definitely got a bit lucky with the last layer, and it wasn't the best executed solve in the world. It was like 50 moves and 8.79 ETPS, so not the best, but it's still a 5, so I can't complain too much. The next solve I'm going to reconstruct is a 567. This is a pretty nice full-step solve from Warmup Canberra 2019. It was round 1, solve 5. Pretty much, this is a really nice white cross. There's a number of options I can take advantage of here. I realized that doing my regular cross solution could actually set up this pair to a 3-move insert. And there's also this pair, but I didn't bother to preserve this. I ended up just looking at this pair. Pretty much I'm just going to do an R move to solve green-white, and I can do a D, and then R prime F, R2, L2. And this will solve the cross, and I immediately can go into inserting this pair into the back. Next pair I saw was immediately this blue-orange, I don't know what I'm thinking. I guess to solve this rotationlessly and also orient a few edges, I could just solve it like this. Although I don't think that's really that worth it. I ended up having a cross-solved OLL anyway, so I don't think that's really worth it. I can just solve it into the back like this, and I can even cancel into this green-orange pair. And here, to orient my edges for this last slot case, I can just do a lefty sledge like this and insert. Although, I could have just done this super easy winter variation, which is just canceling into like the left anti-soon, and then I'd have a really nice J-perm, and so this could have been like a really nice solve. Not that it already wasn't a nice solve, but it could have been even nicer. Another way to orient the edges is just by doing L prime B2L, and then just inserting, but this isn't that bad at all. Here I just have a soon, and then an A perm. So that was a decent solve, even though I kind of missed out on a bit there. It was still pretty well executed. I think it was 56 moves and 9.88 ETPS, so solid solve. Next up is a 562. This was Downtown Vancouver Winter 2020, round 2, solve 2. And so this is a really nice cross. 3 of the cross edges are already solved in relation to each other, and I can just insert the last one with 4 moves. And I was also able to plan cross plus 2, and I knew that the blue-red pair was going to be a 3-move insert, and so that was going to be my first pair. So immediately upon inspection, I just knew that this is probably going to be a pretty nice solve. Pretty much I started by doing a D prime, inserting this cross edge, rotating, solving blue red into the back, and then solving blue orange into the back. Here, I missed out on a lot, and I'll show you why in a second. I could have gotten like a super nice ZBL case that would have probably made the solve like sub 5, I want to say. But this is what I ended up doing. I solved this green-red pair first. I think the way I executed this was like I took it out, and then I did an F move, and then rotated, and then did the last 2 moves, which is kind of weird. But if you slow down the footage of the solve, I have it posted on my channel. I'm pretty sure that's what I did. At least that's what it looked like. So yeah, I inserted it like this, rotate, and then just solve this last pair to the back. Then I have this nice OLL, and then U2, and then I did the RUDG prim. So the solution that I wish I had done, that would have probably given me a pure single, would be the same cross plus 2 solution. So I'm just going to solve my cross in the same first 2 pairs. And here, if I solve green-orange first, and then solve green-red while simultaneously orienting my edges, I get this super easy ZBL case, which is literally just 3 corners. Goes like this. So that was like really dumb. If I had done that solution, that would be a 4-move cross, a planned cross plus 2, 2 free pairs, or 2 3-move inserts, if you will, and a 9-move ZBL. And so that's just a combination of a bunch of stupid luck. But unfortunately, I didn't do that solution. I did the solution that I showed you before with the R perm. But still, though, I still executed it really well. It was a 562. That solution was 63 moves, I think, or 62. I can't remember exactly, and it was 1103 ETPS. And so, yeah, I can't really complain about the solve that much, apart from the solution that I could have done. So this is a 558 from Spokane Summer 2019 Finals, solve 5. And so there's a really nice X cross on white, and pretty much I'm gonna solve the X cross by using the green-red pair. Pretty much I'll do, from this angle, I'll do an L and the D2, and this solves green and orange in relation to one another. And I can do sort of like an L wide, and then a U and another L wide, and this solves blue and red, and this also solves the green-red corner. Finally, I can just insert the green-red edge into the back and do a D. Ideally, here I would have done a U wide to solve this pair rotationlessly, but I only planned the X cross. I didn't know what my pair would be after that. And so I did a D, rotate, and then U, and then just inserting into the back. Here, my last 2 pairs could be rotationless. Both of these edges are oriented, and I could just solve them rotationlessly. But I ended up doing, I rotated, solved this pair into the back, rotated again, and then solved blue-orange. Then I have a 6-move OLL into GC. Oh, wrong AUF. But regardless, that was a decent solve. I mean, I guess there were some slight inefficiencies there, but overall, it's a 558 with, I think it was 52 moves and 9.32 ETPS. And so, it's a very solid solve. I think TPS is about average, and so, yeah, I'm not really complaining about the solve. So my next solve was a 526 from Puget Sound N by N 2019, round 2, and I think this was, yeah, it was solve 5, the last solve. So I have a pretty decent cross, and I also found that I have a really nice keyhole pair that I can do for my first pair. Pretty much I'm going to solve blue and orange first. So green's already solved, And I can just solve blue and orange in relation to green by just doing L, B, L prime, except I kind of executed it like wide R, D, wide R prime, like this. And I can do U prime, R prime, F, R. And I noticed that this corner stayed solved, and I can just do a D move, insert this edge, and do a D prime to solve this pair. Next, I have this nice, pretty decent F12 pair. Set them up, rotate, solve them into the back. Here, I can solve these pairs rotationlessly. I can just like solve green-orange first, and then I have this nice pair. But I ended up rotating, and I solved blue-orange first, like so. And then I realized that I could just go straight into the 3-move insert for the last pair. And then from here, I'm not proud of this, but I think I kind of locked up a bit on this execution, but I have OLL that skipped PLL. So, really lucky solve. I think of all of my 5s that had the lowest move count, it was 44 moves, and I think 8.37 TPS. So, definitely not one of my definitely not one of my prouder 5s, but it's still one of my best 5s in terms of the time. So yeah, this was a pretty okay solve. Next up, I had a 5.21 from Keyboard Longbeard 2019, Finals Solve 3. And so this is a pretty nice white cross, and there's also a really nice X cross opportunity here, which I took advantage of, pretty much. I can do an L move, and then doing a B, F prime will solve this square here, and also set up the green piece. Next, instead of just doing an L to insert green, I'm going to do a UL, and that will solve this edge that goes along with this corner here. Finally, I can do a D, R2, D. Ideally, I could do a D, R2, and then insert this corner, and this would give me a double X cross. But I ended up not seeing that, and so I just did the regular D, R2, D, and then I just insert this pair like so. Next, I think I should have solved green-red. I think that would be slightly easier to do, like that. But I ended up doing blue-orange first, and then I can do green-red. And I did 2 rotations for it, but I think for this case it isn't the worst thing in the world. And so I got an OLL skip, and I just got a V perm. And so yeah, that was 521, 53 moves, and 10.17 ETPS. So very solid solve. Even though it wasn't full step, it was still a lot better than my other 5.2, the 526 that I showed you the previous solve. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of this one. And so finally, we've reached my 3x3 PR single. This is a 5.08 from Vancouver Big Cubes Open 2019. This was round 1, Sol 5. And so I have a pretty self-explanatory cross here. I think, yeah, I did the cross solution that I probably do nowadays. And I also tracked my blue-orange pair. So pretty much I solved green and red in relation to each other by doing L, B, L prime. And the reason why I did that is because that sets up blue and orange really nicely. Because once I solve blue, orange is just going to be one move away from being solved, and I can finally just align the cross. So yeah, once I solve green and red, I can do an R2 prime F, and then a D. And here, for some reason, so I did track the blue-orange pair in inspection, and so I knew that this was going to be my pair. But for some reason, this might have just been out of nerves, or I don't really know what else it could have been. But I ended up solving this pair by rotating RD to R prime, and then rotating again, inserting into the back. And I think it's pretty obvious that I could have instead just immediately solved it with 5 moves like that. There was no point whatsoever in doing those 2 rotations. But I did that, and surprisingly, I did 2 unnecessary rotations in my PR single in 3x3. It's kind of weird. But after that, I have blue-orange, green-orange, sorry. I set them up, insert into the back. Next up, I have blue-red, just pretty self-explanatory. And finally, just green-red. And here I have a super nice OLL case. I realized that I'm going to get at least a U-perm, just because I know that because these 2 are the same and these 2 are opposite, my corners are going to be solved when I solve my OLL. And I also know that this bar gets preserved, and so I knew that this had to be at least a U-perm, maybe even a skip. So I did my OLAUG, and it ended up skipping no AUF. So looking back on it, this is just a lesson that I learned. If I have a bar here and a bar here, both of these get preserved. And so if I notice that I have this type of case, I'm going to get a PLL skip. So yeah, pretty much, yeah, I just did my OLL, skip PLL. Paused a little bit because I wasn't quite sure if I was going to get PLL skip. And so I guess technically, for that reason, you could call it a sub-5 fail. But I wouldn't. This all was near flawless. So, yeah. That was, I think, 48 moves in execution turn metric, which is 9.45 ETPS. And so, definitely not the best TPS in the whole wide world, but definitely not the worst either. So, yeah. Hopefully you guys enjoyed these reconstructions of my official Sub-6 theory singles. I really enjoyed making this video. It was really fun to kind of like track down all of my official Sub-6s, because some of them like weren't on camera, and I just had to kind of go off memory to figure out the solution. And so yeah, I had quite a bit of fun, but I also had a little bit of frustration finding these solutions. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. And yeah, see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.